Welcome to another Know My Faith Monday podcast, and Matthew Johnson from Riverbend Bible Church is with us once again on your own this time, Matthew, not with Phil. Are you okay with that?
I'm praying I survive. Good to see you, Rob.
You too. One of the things that we like doing, obviously, is delving deeper into books, and you've just spent 3 weeks preaching on a book that only has 2 chapters. That's very clever.
Yeah, the book. Well, yeah, the book of Haggai. I'm sure you could do many more sermons than just 3, but yeah, we looked at it over 3 Sundays.
Okay, so give us an overview of Haggai, and then we'll dig deeper.
Sure, Haggai. Obviously, it's a minor prophet, but there's nothing minor about the minor prophets. Obviously, Haggai overview. It contains 4 sermons, 4 messages from God through the prophet preacher Haggai. And we walk through all 4 of those, and each of them remind us of key things in our life, and also God, how God deals with his people, and how God always brings a message through a messenger that he sends at an opportune time in his providence.
Yeah, so Haggai's, I always remember Haggai because it's the last 4 books of the Old Testament, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. So he's pretty much up there at the end of the Old Testament narrative. So I'm assuming he's prophesying and preaching to Judah, not to Israel.
That's right. Yeah. It's post-exilic. He's a post-exilic prophet. The people, obviously, King Nebuchadnezzar came to the southern kingdom, Judah, and then they were into exile, 70 years. Haggai picks up in the first message that God brings through Haggai, which is chapter 1. They've been there for 16 years, back in the land, 16 years. And, there's that well-known accusation or indictment that God brings through Haggai to the people in verse 2. The time has not yet come even for the house of the Lord or house of Yahweh to be rebuilt. And obviously, chapter 1 unfolds that they were comfortable to live in their paneled houses.
Yeah.
So there was misplaced spiritual priorities, and that's really the first message of chapter 1, that there was misplaced spiritual priorities.
Always reminds me a little bit of Solomon, because it goes into details about Solomon building the temple, and it says, so Solomon was 7 years building the temple, but he was 14 years building his own place.
Yeah. Certainly. It begins with a quite a strong accusation, but then you see through chapter 1 when there's the appropriation of taking heed of the message that was given.
Yep.
They begin to turn from their ways, but the journey continues on. Haggai was a great book to unfold. Yeah.
So Haggai's the Jews went back to the land under Ezra. And this is 16 years later. This is before Nehemiah or after Nehemiah?
Before, I believe.
Okay.
And it comes 16 years. They're in the land. They rebuilt the altar. Ezra.
They started well, didn't they?
Yeah, they rebuilt the altar. They began to perform sacrifices, but they got discouraged. They were greatly discouraged. You remember. When they began to rebuild the temple, the Ezra chapter 4, I believe, says that the sound of the moaning of the people who had witnessed the prior temple and the sounds of the joy of the people as they built this temple couldn't be differentiated between each other.
Yeah. Those that saw the temple and thought, oh, this is awesome, we've built a temple, and those that had seen the original temple and go, yeah, bro, this is Meccano.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Haggai, in that opening chapter, Haggai does bring out the consequences of misplaced spiritual priorities. They're quite severe. There was economic disaster, agricultural disaster. Many things were going on. But you see in verse 8 of chapter 1, it really tells you, because we've got to remember that as part of the new covenant in this church age, for us, we go to a building, but the church is the assembly of the people, not the building, but often we do meet in buildings. But for the Jew and under the old covenant, the temple was the place of worship. It was the place where God's glory was made manifest. And verse 8 of chapter 1 says, consider your ways. Verse 7 says, consider your ways. Verse 8 says, go up to the mountains, bring wood and rebuild the temple. that I may be pleased with it and be glorified. And so it's all about God's glory being on display. And so they had misplaced those spiritual priorities, and the consequences were devastating. They looked for much, but behold, it comes to little. When you bring it home, Yahweh says, I blow it away.
Verse 6 does that. It reminds me somewhat of Nahum, where God says, I brought pestilence on you and you still didn't return to me, and so I brought some enemies in and you didn't return, so I gave you a drought and you still, what do I have to do to get you to come back and return to me? And in this, it's like God is saying, do you not get it? You sow much and you reap little because your priorities are wrong. You're prioritizing yourself, not me.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's amazing is obviously Haggai is so connected to the book of Ezra, and Ezra chapter 1 tells us that the preaching of Jeremiah was fulfilled in Yahweh stirring the heart of King Cyrus.
Yeah.
And then we know what King Cyrus did. King Cyrus issues the decree that all of Israel can return to their land. And this next part features quite heavily in the book of Haggai, is that part of Cyrus's decree was that not only were the Jews to return to their land, but also wherever they were found, they were to be given gold and silver, and cattle and goods. And so you see God's mighty providential hand on display.
Interesting. I mean, we've got to bring it back to, the old, how does this affect me? And I think in the modern church, if we're going, number one, what is our priority? Is our priority on me, or is it on God's glory? Are our church services all about me, or are they all about God's glory? I was preaching on the weekend from Isaiah, and that great verse, they shall rise up on wings like eagles, and they shall run and not grow tired. And I'm going, that's used so often, all about me. If I'm a Christian and I'm trusting in God, and you go, no, the whole passage is about how wonderful God is compared to these nonsense idols. God is this, God is this. In fact, those that worship God will rise up like eagles. It's all about God. It's not about me. And so what we've got here, I think, with the Israelites coming back into the land, it's very much gone from this joyous, hey, God has done this, to it's all about me. And that resonates for me with the modern churches. It's all about, I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about me.
You really nail it there, Rob. A me-centric worship as opposed to a God-centered worship. And that's really, chapter 1 really brings that home.
Yeah.
In a big way. The indictment of them saying not yet to God, but saying yes to their panelled houses. And a panelled house was pretty flash, as we say in New Zealand, pretty flash.
Yep.
And so, misplaced spiritual priorities. And that's the call, is the repeated call in chapter 1, consider your ways.